Hi guys, this is Marcin Zaglinski for ADOBE Plus, and today I'm going to be showing you how to rig and animate a character and add scenery and a little bit of effects within the context of my Odyssey piece, which you can see right now. Okay, so this tutorial is going to be a little bit different in the sense that instead of showing you one thing that I did, I'm going to be showing you most of it. I'm going to be going pretty in depth, so this tutorial is kind of long, broken up into two parts. I'm not going to be showing you step by step every single thing. It would just take too long, but I'll be laying down the groundwork so that you can build off of it. And I'm also going to be going into a little bit of workflow just to show you how it's done from start to finish. So I'm going to start off with pre-production. Whenever you're doing a project, it's always good to do pre-production, especially when you're doing a story like this. It's good to do it whenever, but when you need timing and pacing and when the piece needs to be a certain amount. This one was actually supposed to be 30 seconds long, so pre-pro helped out a lot in getting the timing down right. You can see I've already done my pre-pro. It's nothing really complicated. It's just a couple of drawings from Photoshop, scaling back and forth, position moving around. Basically, it's just to get the timing down. I know the little scribbles may not mean anything to you, but I know what's going on here, so. And as long as you know what's going on in your scribbles, that's fine too. Like I said, they don't really have to be super complicated. So I've already made these frames in Photoshop. They're just PSDs. I'm going to bring them in again though. In After Effects, if you drag more than one file into the New Composition button, you can actually sequence the layers automatically. It'll do what's over here where one starts when the other finishes. So I'm going to make these around a second long just for starters. You can see that they've already going from one to the other. Obviously you don't want them all to be 1 second long, so you can resize them as you see fit. Here I have them all done. It's also a good idea to animate to music. This piece was actually inspired by a piece of music, so it's fitting that I would animate to the piece of music. Hi guys, this is Marcin Zaglinski for ADOBE Plus, and today I'm going to be showing you how to rig and animate a character and add scenery and a little bit of effects within the context of my Odyssey piece, which you can see right now. Okay, so this tutorial is going to be a little bit different in the sense that instead of showing you one thing that I did, I'm going to be showing you most of it. I'm going to be going pretty in depth, so this tutorial is kind of long, broken up into two parts. I'm not going to be showing you step by step every single thing. It would just take too long, but I'll be laying down the groundwork so that you can build off of it. And I'm also going to be going into a little bit of workflow just to show you how it's done from start to finish. So I'm going to start off with pre-production. Whenever you're doing a project, it's always good to do pre-production, especially when you're doing a story like this. It's good to do it whenever, but when you need timing and pacing and when the piece needs to be a certain amount. This one was actually supposed to be 30 seconds long, so pre-pro helped out a lot in getting the timing down right. You can see I've already done my pre-pro. It's nothing really complicated, it's just a couple of drawings from Photoshop, scaling back and forth, position moving around. Basically, it's just to get the timing down. I know the little scribbles may not mean anything to you, but I know what's going on here, so. And as long as you know what's going on in your scribbles, that's fine too. Like I said, they don't really have to be super complicated. So I've already made these frames in Photoshop. They're just PSDs. I'm going to bring them in again though. In After Effects, if you drag more than one file into the New Composition button, you can actually sequence the layers automatically. It'll do what's over here where one starts when the other finishes. So I'm going to make these around a second long just for starters. You can see that they've already going from one to the other. Obviously you don't want them all to be 1 second long, so you can resize them as you see fit. Here I have them all done. It's also a good idea to animate to music. This piece was actually inspired by a piece of music, so it's fitting that I would animate to the piece of music. In After Effects, you can actually add layer markers while you're listening to audio. So let's do that. Animating to music is good for, cuts. Whenever something changes or like drums kick in or something, it's always good to animate to that because you get sort of a, it's logical, I guess. So you press function period and that'll. Hi guys, this is Marcin Zaglinski for AE Tuts Plus, and today I'm going to be showing you how to rig and animate a character and add scenery and a little bit of effects within the context of my Odyssey piece, which you can see right now. It does curve, so I do want a little more detail in that. I'm going to close this out. Okay, now I'll bring them into After Effects. Let me get those out of the way real quick. And now to import the file. Okay, sorry about that. You want to import from Illustrator. You have to choose Composition Crop Layers. If you do footage, it's not going to bring in any layers. It's all going to be flattened. If you do just composition, that is sort of what you want, but not really. So here it's in a composition without the crop layers. See, they are separated here, but the layer size is way too big. I need the layers to be only as big as the individual pieces, where right now they're the size of the actual composition. So let's bring them in as crop layers. And you can see now the layers are only as big as the pieces of the guy. So basically, I want to animate this character sitting up. A good way to start is to turn the opacity down so you can see where the joints are. Around 60 sounds fine. Okay, I'm going to start with rigging the character. Basically, if I want the head to rotate, I wouldn't want it to rotate around that axis point. See, I don't want it rotating right there. That's not how a human head rotates. So I'm going to use the pan behind tool right here, which shifts your anchor point, and I'm going to place it right around there. You hit W for rotation, and now you see it's rotating how I want it to. We'll do the same for the neck. I'm going to place it somewhere around there. And just continue that process, placing the joints in the most logical places. So I've got all my anchor points set to the appropriate places, and now we're going to need to parent all of these layers together. Now think about how the human body works. The head needs to be parented to the neck. The neck is going to be parented to the upper back, the lower back, or I'm sorry, the lower arm to the upper arm to the upper back, and so on and so forth. And now we can start animating. Now at this point he's going to be sitting still, and I'm going to be setting a keyframe for rotation. I'm going to press the stopwatch. So the body is going to move with the lower back first. So I set the keyframe, move down the timeline, and I rotate him over. Now as you can see, because of parenting, everything that's attached to him moves along with it. If I didn't have anything parented, the arms, the head, the neck wouldn't move either. I'm going to set this keyframe a little shy of our out point, since I want him to sit up and look first. The upper back is going to rotate a little bit afterwards. Move it up a little bit. The neck is going to start right here. R for rotation, set the keyframe, and then at this point, rotate it this far. And then the same thing for the head. A little tip I can give you about animation is you don't want them all animating at the same time. You sort of want them overlapping and offset them a little bit, just to make them seem a little bit more natural. If they were all, for instance, stopping at the same time, it would look really stiff, and that's not how people move. Okay, so at that point he's looking all the way up. Let's preview that. Looks good so far. Also, you want to use EZs on keyframes. You right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease. Basically what that does is it slows down the animation and brings it to a gradual stop, or a gradual stop rather than an abrupt one. Okay, so now I'm animating the right arm, and I want the right arm to raise a little bit as he's moving up. So here I've got the right arm selected, and I want him to stop when the upper back stops. So I'm going to set the keyframes here for rotation on the arm. Move down to where the back stops. And then I'm going to rotate to where I think it seems right. And again, I right click, go to Easy Ease. Okay, so as you can see, I've got all my compositions sequenced according to the pre-production and ready to go. Let me just show you a little bit of the other animation I did. For the hand here, I want to go up. I'm gonna set position keyframes so that the hand looks as if it's coming up. And then right about there, it's going to have moved up all the way. And again, I'm adding Easy Ease to the keyframes themselves. It's actually a little fast for me, so I'm going to move it over just a little bit. Let me show you what I did for the front. What that's going to be is this shot. So it's a front view of the character. Now in order to do that, there aren't really any keyframes per se other than wiggle expressions. For the right leg here, or left foot I should say, I'm sorry, you can actually set a wiggle expression so that they don't animate together, meaning that you can wiggle just one axis at a time. The basic wiggle expression, wiggle 1, 30, would make it wiggle along both axes by 30 pixels every 1 second. However, I don't want that. I only want it to be wiggling more along the y-axis than the x, meaning up and down. So I put this wiggle expression in this form. It's bracket, then the wiggle expression, parentheses 0, bracket. Basically, this is sort of like a wiggle expression within a wiggle expression. If you're familiar with math, this is how logs work. This first wiggle expression, wiggle 3, 5, dash 0, tells the 0 value, in this case x, to wiggle 3 times a second by 5 pixels. Then in this one, for 1, which is y, 10 pixels 3 times per second. Now if you don't want one of the axes to move, or you do want one of the axes to not move at all, you would just replace the wiggle expression, the word wiggle, in the value you don't want to move with the actual word value, so that it's taking the number that's there already and using that instead of the wiggle. Let me show you one more. As you can see, the arms are also wiggling, however, they're sort of mirroring each other. So when this arm moves up, this one moves too, for the same value. Now we're going to use another simple expression. I'll click on the rotation stopwatch, then pick whip it to the rotation of the left shoulder. Then, in the beginning of the expression, I'm going to put a minus sign. So what that does, it tells After Effects to take this value of the rotation of the left shoulder and make it negative, so that as this one moves up, the other one moves up along with it. So I'm also going to need an arm here, as you can see in the preview. As you can see, all my corners are rounded here at the joints. There's no sharp edges. I'm also going to need a guy flying, squatting, and a front shot. Now, as far as the assets go, we're going to make a couple of star layers. It's not very hard. Basically, you just go into Photoshop. You can also take a photo of stars, but photos aren't as versatile, I think. You want to make your layer a little bit larger than your composition, since I'm going to be scaling and changing the position, and I don't want pixelization. Okay, so I've got a black layer here, and I'm going into my brush presets. Go to the brush tip shape, turn on spacing all the way up, pick a white color. What that does is it actually has the strokes spaced out instead of being all one continuous line. I'm going to turn on scattering. So basically you just go in and paint in a couple of stars. You want to make a couple of these since we do want a little bit of variation within them. Alternatively, if you have a Trapco plugin, specifically Particular, there's actually a really great preset on there for a static star field. And just like that, you have a star field made. Now for the atmosphere, this is just a picture of Earth from NASA, so it is free. Now the galaxy, it's another picture from NASA. I'm going to bring that into a new composition. I'm going to call it Stars. I'm going to bring my star layers in as well. You can get a little more detailed in Photoshop if you want to. I'm going to bring in the galaxy over here. Scale it down a lot. And then I'm going to mask around it to hide the other stars. See, we don't want those edges around there. With the layer selected, if you press the ellipse tool or you double click it, it'll make an automatic mask for you. I'm going to feather it out and also bring it in with the mask expansion. You also hit MM for mask properties. Okay, so now I'm going to animate it swirling, and for that I'm going to go into the effects and apply Liquify. If you're familiar with Liquify from Photoshop, it's pretty much the same thing. So I got my brush around the same size as the galaxy. It's a little bit of a render hog, but that's okay. And now I'm going to twirl it. Now I'm going to set a keyframe for the actual distortion, set that to 100 and move it over, and then I'm going to make one for 0. So now, when I scrub through the timeline, you can see it's very subtle, but over time, the galaxy is twirling. Also, I don't want the background stars to be static, so I'm going to add a couple of the other star layers. Now I'm going to put into a blending mode, add. What that does is it takes away the black and leaves only the bright parts of a picture. I'm going to go to Effects, stylized glow, since I want the stars to be glowing. Let's make it maybe red and yellow. Solo that. Okay. Let me correct this. We actually have to pre-compose this since it is in a blending mode. What was actually happening is it was glowing around these edges instead of the actual stars. So I'm going to pre-compose it, Command-Shift-C. And now I'm going to add my glow. Alright, since I want them to be red, I'm actually going to do it differently. I'm going to add curves to them, go into the red channel, and just boost it up. Then I'm going to make a new solid, call it noise, and I'm going to apply fractal noise. It's a very versatile effect. The basic setting is fine. You just want to boost the contrast up. You'll see why in a second. And you set evolution. Right now it's just sitting there kind of. An easy way to do it is with an expression. So you alt click and I'm going to type time times maybe 100. So now it's animating without any keyframes. Now for the stars pre-comp, I'm going to set a track matte for Luma Matte, meaning that it's going to take the white parts of the layer above it, which is our noise, and that's where it'll show our stars. Wherever it's black, it's going to conceal them. So now when we scrub through the timeline, you can see that the stars shimmer. Okay, I'm going to put those behind there. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to pre-compose them just to keep it a little more tidy. I might actually duplicate them, Command-D for duplicate. And I'm going to add another curves. Now these I actually want blue, so I'm going to boost the blue channel up. And then I'm going to rotate them, just so there's a little bit of variance in there, and scale them up slightly. So now you can see we have a shimmering star field. As far as the eyeball goes, I had originally made it in Illustrator. However, it's a lot cooler and simpler just to make it in After Effects. So that's what I'm going to do. Make a new composition, calling it eye, 2000 by 2000 pixels. It needs to be square since the eye is even around all sides. I'm going to make a new solid for the base. The eye is going to be blue, so I sort of want a steel gray for the base, but of course you can change the colors to whatever you want. I'm going to call this base. Now I'm making a mask. Feather it out and bring it in a little bit. Make a new solid again. Now I'm going to make the iris. The color doesn't matter. I can actually take the mask from the first layer and copy it onto there. Actually, I could have just duplicated the layer. Anyway, I'm going to go over to the effects and generate and advanced lightning. Now, since I want those shapes, lightning is a great way to do that, to sort of just add that randomness that you find in a human eye. For the lightning type, I'm going to change it to Omni, and the starting point to the middle of the eyeball. You can see there's only one here, and to have more you have to change the conductivity state. What I'm actually going to do is add the time expression, time times around 30, so that way it's animating without any keyframes. So now as it goes through, you can see it shoots out in all directions. For the coarse settings, I'm going to make it 1 wide and fully opaque, also white. I don't want any glow since I want to control the color of the iris myself, so I'm going to turn the glow all the way down, and I'm going to turn forking all the way up. Now when there's a lot of these, since it's really dense pretty much everywhere, it's going to be too dense once they're duplicated. It's pretty much going to be pure white. So I'm going to go to the expert settings and turn the minimum fork distance up. That way it only starts to fork around there. The complexity I'm going to bring down to around 5, just so it's not as jagged. And then in order to duplicate these, I'm going to use echo. I'm going to set the time to around 1 second. And then slide down my timeline. Basically what this does is it takes the state of your layer, however many seconds ago you set echo to, and it duplicates it. See, if I didn't have the conductivity animating, it would duplicate that layer, but they would all be on top of each other. But since I have it shooting out in all sides, it's actually picking up all those and duplicating them. So I'm going to set the expression again, and I'm going to turn the echoes up to around 50. Okay, that looks pretty good. You may want to scrub through just to find a frame, to find one where they're a little bit more evenly dispersed. That looks pretty good. I'll also turn the decay a little bit up, just so they don't end as sharply as right now. Now, since I'm going to be scrubbing through and animating this, I don't want the lightning to be moving or animating as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to pre-compose it, naming it Iris 1, and now I'm going to freeze frame the layer. I right click on the layer, go to time, and freeze frame. Now you can see that as I scrub through, they're going to be staying in that one spot and not animating. I'm going to set this one to color dodge, and I'm going to add a tint to it since I don't want them pure white, and I'm going to make them a little bit blue. You can see that it gets kind of pixelated, so I'm also going to add a blur to it. Fast blur, and turn it up just slightly. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to duplicate that layer. This one I'm going to tint a little bit brighter. I'm also going to rotate it. and we're going to turn the blur down to around 2. This one I'm going to set to screen. I'm going to take the base layer, duplicate it, and put it on top. I'm going to solo this just to see what we're doing, and I'm going to use the effect Roughen Edges. And then what that does is it obviously roughens the edges. I'm going to set it to photocopy, and then our mask, for mask properties, and I'm going to bring it in through the mask expansion, and I'm also going to feather it out to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to duplicate that. I also set it to lighter color, so it's duplicated now, and I'm going to bring that one in even further. Basically, we're just adding a little bit of noise to the eyeball just to make it seem more natural. Duplicate that again, and it's going to be set to a lighter color. And then one more maybe. And I'm going to bring that one up. And I'm going to set the color to be mostly gray instead of bluish gray. And I'm going to set it to classic color dodge. Those I might actually change the color to be a little bit brighter. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to make one more solid for the pupil. Turn it black. Bring it in, as well as feather it out. This one I might actually make, or the noise layer, I'm going to make a different color to add a little bit of variation. I'm also bringing it in so it's mostly around the actual pupil. Okay, so just play around with these settings, add more blur or spikes as you see fit, and you can pre-compose that, add curves to it to control the color even further. Just play around with the settings pretty much until you think you've got it down right. Okay, one thing I didn't show was how to make the grass, but that can easily be done in Photoshop. Literally all you have to do is make a new layer and take the grass brush. It's in your brush presets, and honestly all you do is draw a little bit of grass. Save it out, and then we're going to bring it into After Effects and animate them. Okay, so that's it as far as rigging, animating, as well as making assets. Stick around for part 2, and I'm going to be going more in depth into my actual shots.